The night I found the key, I was doing laundry because neither of us had remembered to do it before the hamper started leaning like a tired old man. It was close to midnight. The dryer was thumping in the little room off the kitchen. One of Natalie's work shirts knocking against the metal drum with a dull, steady rhythm. I was half asleep, standing in my socks, pulling damp clothes from the washer, when her gray coat slipped off the top of the pile and hit the floor. Something small skated across the tile. A key. Not our house key. Not her car key. This one was on a cheap plastic tag with an address written in black marker. Portland, Maine. Natalie had told me she'd been in Boston that week for hospital training. I stood there with the key in my palm, smelling laundry detergent and warm cotton, listening to the dryer turn and turn like nothing in the world had changed. There was a crumpled coffee receipt in the same pocket. Portland again. For a while I did not move. I just stared at that little metal tooth and felt my life rearrange itself around it. My name is Daniel Mercer. At the time I was 39, fixing furnaces and air conditioning systems for a family service company in southern New Hampshire. Natalie was 37 and worked in records coordination at St. Brigid's Hospital. We had been married 9 years. Long enough to know the sound of each other's footsteps in a dark hallway. Long enough to stop asking what the other wanted from the diner, because we already knew. Our life was ordinary from the outside, and for a long time I thought ordinary meant safe. We had a small house on a quiet street where the maple trees dropped too many leaves every October. The kitchen window stuck in winter. The back fence leaned after storms. Natalie left half-finished mugs of coffee beside the sink, and I always complained, then rinsed them anyway. On Sunday mornings, I made eggs and toast while she read hospital emails at the table with one foot tucked under her. There had been tenderness once. Not the movie kind, the better kind. Her hand finding mine in the grocery store. Her leaving the porch light on when I had late calls. Me warming her car before sunrise because she hated scraping ice. Then 3 years before the key, we lost our son. He never got a first breath. He had a name, though. We named him Caleb. Natalie had been 34 weeks along when a truck crossed the center line on Route 16 during a wet afternoon in March. The doctors saved Natalie. They could not save him. After that, our house became full of rooms we avoided. There was the little bedroom at the end of the hall, painted a soft blue Natalie had chosen on a bright Saturday when we still believed paint colors mattered. There were boxes in the attic with folded onesies, a tiny hat, unopened diapers, a mobile with wooden stars. I told myself I was being strong by not touching any of it. Natalie told herself something different, I guess. We never compared notes. Grief did not hit us like thunder. It worked more like cold air leaking through a crack. At first, people came by with casseroles and flowers and sentences that began with "at least," until I learned to stop listening after those 2 words. Then they stopped coming. I went back to work because broken compressors made sense. A system either ran or it didn't. If it didn't, there was a reason. Low refrigerant, bad capacitor, clogged filter. People were not like that. Natalie started volunteering at the hospital with families who had lost babies. She went to support groups. She wrote long emails at night. Sometimes I'd see her sitting in the glow of her laptop, crying so quietly I pretended not to notice because I thought giving her privacy was kindness. Maybe it was cowardice. We still loved each other, I believe that. But love can get buried under things you refuse to name. By the time I found that key, we were polite more than close. We shared bills, meals, weather reports, and a bed that felt wider every month. The first strange thing happened on a Tuesday in September. Natalie came home late, later than usual, with rain in her hair and that tired hospital smell clinging to her cardigan. Antiseptic, paper, stale coffee. She kissed my cheek without really looking at me and put her phone face down on the kitchen table. Dinner was meatloaf I had kept warm too long. The edges had gone dry. She picked at it. "Long day?" I asked. "Awful," she said. "They're short-staffed again." Her phone lit up. She moved fast. Too fast. Her hand covered the screen, but not before I saw the message. "He asked for you again to the sender was just M." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "Who's M?" She looked at me, and for 1 second her face emptied out. "Meredith," she said. "From the bereavement program. She has a he asking for you." Natalie took a sip of water. "Patient's family member. It's complicated." The answer came clean and quick, like something she had already practiced. Then she picked up the phone and slipped it into her pocket. I let it go because I wanted to let it go. That is the part I'm not proud of. I saw the first loose thread and chose not to pull because I was afraid the whole cloth would come apart in my hands. After that, the little things started arriving in a line. A parking stub from Portland tucked into the console of her car. A new phone passcode after 9 years of using our anniversary. Calls she took on the porch, even when it was cold enough to see her breath. A blue dress I'd never seen before hanging in the back of the closet with the tag already cut off. When I asked about the parking stub, she frowned like I had asked about someone else's life. "Oh, I must pick that up with paperwork from the hospital," she said. "You know how files get passed around." I knew paperwork. I knew hospitals. I also knew that parking stubs did not migrate into a person's car by accident. Still, I said, that became my main contribution to our marriage for a while, right? One night in October, I came home from an emergency call with my hands still smelling like machine oil. A family's heat pump had died, and their two little girls had sat on the stairs watching me work in pink pajamas, asking if I was a heater doctor. I had laughed in their hallway, then sat in my truck afterward, feeling like someone had pressed a thumb into an old bruise. When I pulled into our driveway, the kitchen lights were on. Natalie stood on the back porch with her phone pressed to her ear. She didn't see me. The window was cracked open, and her voice carried through the damp air. "No," she said. "Daniel can't know. Not yet." I sat there with the engine off, both hands on the wheel. There were a dozen innocent meanings to those words. I tried to find one and hold it, but the mind is cruel when it's scared. It filled in the blanks with everything I already feared. I watched her wrap her free arm around herself. She sounded small, tender. "I know," she whispered. "I'll come Thursday." Thursday she was supposed to be in Boston. I slept badly that night, if you can call it sleeping. Natalie lay beside me, turned toward the window, and I stared at the ceiling fan. Around 3 in the morning, I almost woke her up. I almost said, "Tell me the truth, even if it ruins us." But I looked at the shape of her shoulder under the blanket and remembered another night, years earlier, when she had held my hand in a hospital bed and asked if Caleb had suffered. I had not known how to answer, so I had said nothing. Maybe that was when we started losing each other. On Thursday, I called my dispatcher and said I was sick. I wasn't, not physically. I drove my service truck to the hospital parking lot and waited behind a row of bare-branched trees with a gas station coffee going cold in the cup holder. Natalie came out at 11:16. She wore the blue dress under her coat. I hated noticing that. She got into her car and pulled out toward the highway. I followed at a distance, feeling ridiculous and sick and strangely calm. The radio muttered traffic reports. Rain tapped the windshield. She did not take the exit toward Boston. She drove north. Portland was gray that day, all wet brick and low clouds. She parked near an old apartment building by the harbor, red brick with black fire escapes and a crooked front awning. I parked half a block down behind a delivery van and watched her get out. She had a paper bag in one hand. Groceries, maybe. Soup. Bread. She used the key. My key, the one I had found. The building swallowed her. For almost 2 hours, I sat in my truck while rain blurred the windshield. I told myself to go in. I told myself to leave. I did neither. Men like to imagine they'll be brave when the moment comes. Sometimes bravery is just knowing what door to open. I did not. At 1:34, Natalie came back out. Before she reached her car, she turned and looked up at a second-floor window. A man stood there. I couldn't see him clearly. Thin face, gray in his hair, though he didn't seem old. One hand braced against the window frame like standing was work. Natalie lifted her hand in a small wave. Then she wiped her face with her sleeve. She had been crying. The man stayed in the window until she drove away. I took a picture of the building. Then I drove home by a different route so she wouldn't see my truck. I beat her back by 20 minutes, put her coat where it belonged, returned the key to the pocket, and stood at the sink, washing a clean coffee mug because my hands needed something to do. When she came in, she looked tired and sad. "Training run long?" I asked. She hesitated. "Yeah, in Boston?" She looked at me then, just for a second. "Yes," she said. That yes did more damage than the key. When someone lies to you in a voice you still love, the whole world changes shape. For the next week, I became the kind of man I used to judge. I checked receipts. I watched her face when her phone buzzed. I listened for names. I noticed when she wore perfume and when she didn't. Every normal action looked guilty if I stared at it long enough. I hated myself for it. I hated her more for making me feel justified. The worst piece came on a Friday afternoon when her car needed new wiper blades. I offered to replace them before the storm rolled in. She tossed me the keys without thinking and went upstairs to shower. In the glove compartment, under the owner's manual, I found a white envelope folded in half, a motel receipt from Portland. One night, Natalie's name. My vision narrowed around the paper. I could hear the shower running upstairs, the old pipes ticking in the wall. Inside the envelope was a small card, handwritten. "Thank you for staying when everyone else left. No name." Just that sentence. I sat in the driver's seat with the door open and the rain starting, one foot on the driveway, one foot in the car. There are moments when the body understands before the mind is ready. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold. I folded the receipt and card back exactly as I'd found them. Then I took them inside. I called my friend Mark first. Mark used to be a state trooper before his knees got bad and his patients got worse. He lived 2 towns over and had been the closest thing I had to a brother since high school. He answered with, "You never call during business hours unless something's on fire." Nothing's on fire. That means something's worse. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the envelope on the counter. "I think Natalie is seeing someone." Mark was quiet for a beat. "You think or you know?" I found a motel receipt. He exhaled slowly. Danny, she's been going to Portland, lying about Boston. There's an apartment, a man. Have you talked to her? No. Then talk to her before you do anything stupid. I'm not going to do anything stupid. People always say that right before they do. I almost told him the address. I almost told him about the man in the window, but something stopped me. Shame, maybe. Or pride. I wanted one person in the world to not know the full size of my humiliation. I just needed to say it out loud, I said. Say it to her, Mark said. And don't say it angry if you can help it. I put the envelope on the dining table and turned off every light except the one above it. Then I waited. Natalie came home just after 7. She sat inside, shook rain from her coat, and stopped when she saw me sitting there. Her eyes moved to the envelope. The color left her face. I had imagined this moment for days. In my imagination, I was controlled, almost noble. I would ask one perfect question and she would break under the weight of the truth. Real life was uglier. How long, I asked. She closed the door behind her. Daniel, how long? She took one step toward the table, then stopped. It's not what you think. I laughed once. It came out hard and empty. That is the worst sentence you could have picked. Her eyes filled. Please, I need you to listen. I've been listening. I listened when your phone lit up. I listened when you said I couldn't know. I listened when you told me Boston while you were using a key in Portland. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Who is he? I asked. She put one hand on the back of a chair, like she needed it to stay upright. It's complicated. No. Complicated is choosing paint for a room we never got to use. Complicated is sitting across from your wife for 3 years pretending silence is respect. This is simple, you lied. She flinched at the room. We both knew which one I meant. Daniel, please don't do this tonight. When would be better? After your next motel stay? That wasn't don't. My voice cracked, and I hated that too. Don't stand in this house and make me feel stupid, she whispered. I was trying to protect you. That sentence snapped something in me. Protect me? I stood so fast, the chair legs scraped the floor. You didn't protect me. You left me here with all of it. You took the only part of yourself that still talked about Caleb and gave it to some man in Portland. Her face changed. I should have stopped. I saw the hurt before I finished. But I kept going because wounded people sometimes aim for the deepest place they can find. You didn't just leave me, Natalie. You took our dead son with you. The silence after that was worse than shouting. She slapped me. Not hard. Not like a movie. Her hand hit my cheek and then flew to her own mouth like she couldn't believe it belonged to her. Tears spilled down her face. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry. I touched my cheek, more stunned than hurt. Then she said, his name is Aaron. The name landed between us. Aaron. I thought she had finally given him shape. The man in the window. The motel. The secret voice on the phone. I nodded slowly because if I spoke, I didn't know what would come out. 9 years, I said. And that's how I find out his name. I grabbed my keys from the counter. Natalie followed me to the door. Daniel, please. Not like this. You don't understand. You made sure of that. I drove to the company lot and slept in my service truck behind the garage, wrapped in my work jacket with the seat reclined too far back to be comfortable. The heater clicked on and off through the night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Natalie looking up at that second-floor window. At dawn, the sky was the color of dirty wool. I washed my face in the garage bathroom and stared at myself under the fluorescent lights. There was a faint red mark on my cheek. I looked older than 39, not wiser, just worn down. Mark found me around 8. He came through the side door holding two coffees and wearing the expression of a man who already knew more than he wanted to. I went by your house, he said. Natalie told me enough. I took one of the coffees. Great. She didn't tell me everything. Then joined the club. Mark leaned against the workbench. The Portland address. Was it on Brackett Street? My hand tightened around the cup. I looked at him. How do you know that? He sighed. Because I know who Aaron is. The garage seemed to shrink around me. In the next bay, one of the younger guys started an air compressor. The sudden rattle made me jump. Mark set his coffee down. Aaron Vale. I knew the name before he finished saying it. Not from Natalie. From court documents. From police reports. From the worst season of my life. Aaron Vale was the driver. He had been 19 when he crossed the center line on Route 16. His mother had been in the hospital dying fast, and he had been driving too quickly in the rain. There were no drugs, no alcohol, no dramatic evil. Just speed, panic, wet pavement, and one terrible suspect that took my son before he was born. I had seen him in court once. A skinny kid in a borrowed suit, sobbing so hard the judge had to pause. I hated him for that too. I wanted him cold. I wanted him monstrous. His grief felt like theft. After the civil hearing, I told Natalie I never wanted to hear his name again. She had listened. For 3 years she had listened. Mark pulled a folded sheet from his jacket pocket and set it on the bench. He's been living in Portland. Kidney failure. No real family left. His mother died last year. He's been in and out of the hospital. I stared at the paper without touching it. How do you know all this? Natalie called me months ago, he said quietly. That hit almost as hard as the name. She called you? She was scared to tell you. She asked if there was any legal issue with contacting him through a victim offender mediation program. I told her it wasn't illegal. I also told her it would probably break your heart if you found out the wrong way. I laughed bitterly. Good advice. Mark did not smile. She went to ask him why. That's how it started. Not forgiveness, not friendships. She wanted to look him in the face and ask how he kept living after Caleb didn't. My throat closed. She found a sick man in a cold apartment, Mark continued. A man who thinks about that accident every day. She didn't tell you because she knew exactly what you'd think. She had a motel receipt. He was admitted overnight during that storm last month. She stayed near the hospital because she was too tired to drive home. Call the motel. Call the hospital. It's all exactly what she says. I picked up the paper then. Aaron's name was at the top of a medical assistance form. The address matched the key. The room blurred in a way I refused to let come tears. She should have told me, I said. Yes, Mark said. She should have. I waited for him to soften it. He didn't. And you should have told her years ago that you were drowning instead of pretending you were holding the boat steady. I looked up sharply. Mark held my stare. I'm not saying she handled it right. I'm saying pain makes liars out of decent people sometimes, including you. I wanted to be angry at him. It would have been easier. But the truth has a way of entering a room without asking permission. For 3 years, Natalie had walked into hospitals and support rooms and grief meetings while I fixed machines and called it survival. I thought I was protecting us by never saying Caleb's name unless she did. Maybe she thought she was protecting me by keeping Aaron's name buried. We had both built walls and then wondered why we couldn't reach each other. I left work before lunch. The drive home took 20 minutes, and I spent all of them rehearsing words that fell apart as soon as I pulled into the driveway. Natalie's car was there. The porch light was on even though it was daytime. Inside, the house was too quiet. I found her in Caleb's room. The door was open. For 3 years, that door had stayed shut except when Natalie dusted the hallway and pretended not to look at it. Now she sat on the floor beside the crib we had never taken apart. There was dust on the rail. A small stuffed bear rested in the corner, its yellow ribbon faded. Natalie had a blue baby blanket in her lap. She looked up when I came in. Her face was pale, eyes swollen. She did not stand. Mark told you, she said. I nodded. The room smelled faintly of closed windows and old cotton. Afternoon light came through the curtains, soft and useless. I'm sorry I hit you, she said. I'm sorry for what I said. She looked down at the blanket. You meant it. I meant it when I said it. That doesn't make it right. Her fingers moved along the edge of the fabric. I didn't give Caleb to Aaron. I know. I didn't know what I was doing at first, she said. I thought if I saw him, I'd hate him better. Does that make sense? I stepped into the room. My legs felt heavy. It does. But he wasn't what I wanted him to be. Her voice shook. I wanted a monster. I wanted someone I could point to and say, there, that's where all of this belongs. But he was just a person, sick, alone. Still 19 in some part of himself, still standing in the rain on Route 16. I sat on the floor across from her. The crib stood between us like a witness. I don't know if I forgive him, she said. Some days I think I do. Some days I look at him and I'm furious that he gets to keep waking up. Then I feel ashamed because he looks like waking up is punishment enough. I rubbed my hands over my face. Why didn't you tell me? Her laugh was small and broken. Because you told me never to say his name. I had. I remembered the exact night. We were in this room before we closed it. She had been holding Caleb's tiny hat, and I had said, don't ever say that kid's name in this house. I meant Aaron. But the sentence had filled the room like poison. I thought you'd see it as a betrayal, she said. I did. I know. We sat with that. No music, no dramatic rain against the window, just the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen and the soft creak of the house settling around us. I saw you at the apartment, I said. I followed you. She closed her eyes. I figured. I thought he was. I know what you thought. I found the motel receipt. He had an infection, they admitted him. Meredith couldn't stay. I did. I slept in a chair in the waiting room until my back hurt so bad I got a room for 3 hours. She shook her head. I should have thrown the receipt away, or told you. Both probably. Who wrote the card? Aaron. After that night, she looked at me. Not romantic. Not even close. He meant I stayed when his mother was gone, when his caseworker didn't show, when everyone else was tired of him being a reminder of the worst thing he ever did. I looked at the little bear in the crib. For years, I had imagined Aaron somewhere far away, living carelessly, laughing, driving fast, forgetting. It had fed my anger, that imagined life. Now reality had replaced it with something harder to hate. I don't know how to forgive him, I said. Natalie's face softened. I'm not asking you to. What are you asking? She folded the blanket carefully, corner to corner. I don't know anymore. I think I wanted you to come with me someday. I think I wanted to believe we could stand in the same room as the truth and not fall apart. I reached across the space between us and put my hand on the floor, palm up. She looked at it for a long time before she took it. Her hand felt colder than I remembered. "Will you take me to him?" I asked. She went still. "Not today," I said. "Whenever you think he can handle it, whenever you can handle it. But I need to stop making a ghost out of him." Tears slid down her face again quietly this time. "Okay," she whispered. 2 days later, we drove to Portland. Natalie held the steering wheel with both hands. I sat beside her with a knot in my chest so tight it felt physical. Neither of us talked much. The highway rolled under us in gray strips. Bare trees lined the road. Every mile north felt like moving toward a room I had locked from the inside. When we reached Brackett Street, I recognized everything from the day I followed her. The crooked awning, the red brick, the black fire escape, the second-floor window. Only this time I got out of the car. The stairwell smelled like old carpet and boiled cabbage. Natalie climbed slowly, not because she was tired, but because she was giving me time. At the second floor, she paused outside a chipped green door and looked at me. "You can still leave," she said. I shook my head. She knocked twice, then unlocked the door. The apartment was small and colder than it should have been. A space heater sat sights near the couch. Pill bottles lined a TV tray. There was a stack of medical bills under a magnet shaped like a lobster. Beside the window, a small plant leaned toward the weak light, stubborn and green. Aaron Vale sat in an armchair with a blanket over his legs. He was 22 now, but looked both younger and older. Thin wrists, hollow cheeks, hair already threaded with gray. When he saw me, he tried to stand. I hated that instinct. I hated that he wanted to show respect. I hated that he was weak enough for it to matter. "Don't," I said. He stopped halfway and lowered himself back into the chair. Natalie shut the door behind us. For a moment, nobody spoke. Aaron looked at me with eyes I remembered from court. Not exactly the same. Back then, they had been frantic, full of fear. Now they were tired. Fear was still there, but it had settled into him like a permanent weather. "Mr. Mercer," he said. My last name sounded wrong in his mouth. I looked around because looking at him was too much. The sink held 2 bowls. A pharmacy bag sat on the counter. The heater clicked once and failed to start. "I don't know what I'm doing here," I said. Aaron nodded. "I wouldn't either." Natalie stood near the door, arms folded, watching both of us like any sudden movement might break the room. Aaron swallowed. "I think about him every morning." The words were quiet. I turned back to him. "Don't," I said, but there was no force in it. He looked down. "Okay." The silence after that stretched. I had imagined this meeting so many times without knowing I was imagining it. In my mind, I punched him. I cursed him. I forgave him in one clean, impossible sentence. None of those things happened. I stood in a cold apartment looking at the person whose mistake had split my life in two, and all I felt was too much of everything. Anger, pity, shame, grief. The old fatherhood that had nowhere to go. The heater clicked again. "That thing broken?" Aaron blinked, thrown by the question. "It works sometimes. It's 30 degrees outside." I called the landlord. "Of course you did." I crossed the room and crouched by the unit. It was a cheap electric heater, dust packed thick behind the grill. The cord had a bad bend near the plug. I unplugged it and checked the outlet, then the reset switch. Natalie watched me without speaking. Aaron said, "You don't have to do that, I know." My voice came out rough. I cleaned the grill with an old toothbrush from the bathroom and tightened a loose screw with the small driver I kept on my keychain. It wasn't much. 10 minutes of work. A stupid little repair. When I plugged it back in, the fan coughed, then started pushing warm air into the room. I stood. Aaron had tears in his eyes. He looked away fast. "I'm not forgiving you today," I said. He nodded. "I understand. I might not ever know how to do that." "I understand that too." I looked at the plant by the window, then at the medical bills, then at Natalie. "But I'm tired of keeping you as a monster in my head. It's eating parts of me I need back." Aaron pressed his hand over his mouth. Natalie's eyes closed. I didn't hug him. I didn't offer my hand. I didn't give him peace because I didn't have any extra to give. But before we left, I wrote down the number of a heating repair charity that sometimes helped low-income tenants, and I put it on the counter. Outside, the air smelled like salt and exhaust. Natalie and I sat in the car without starting it. After a while, she reached across the console and took my hand. I let her. On the drive home, we did not solve our marriage. That's important. Some stories like to pretend one revelation fixes years of silence. It doesn't. The truth did not make us instantly whole. It just gave us a place to begin. We talked in pieces. She told me about the first time she saw Aaron after the accident, how she had expected rage and found a trembling apology that made her angrier because it was sincere. I told her about sleeping in the truck and how part of me had wanted the affair to be real because betrayal was simpler than what we were facing now. She cried at that. I did too, a little, though I kept my eyes on the road when it was my turn to drive. That evening, when we got home, I climbed into the attic and pulled down the boxes. Natalie stood at the bottom of the ladder, one hand over her mouth. "We don't have to," she said. "I think we do." The boxes were dusty. My handwriting was on the tape. Nursery, clothes misc. I remembered sealing them after the funeral with the focus of a man defusing a bomb. If I could put everything away neatly, maybe the pain would be neat too. It hadn't worked. We carried the boxes into Caleb's room and sat on the floor. The house was dark except for the lamp by the crib. One by one, we opened them. Tiny socks, a blanket with clouds on it, a board book about farm animals, a pack of pacifiers still in plastic. The wooden star mobile. Natalie held up the little knit hat from the hospital, the one that would have fit in my palm. I thought I would break when I saw it. Instead, I breathed it hurt, but it did not kill me. I used to come in here when you were at work, she said. I know, no, you don't. She smiled sadly. I would sit in the chair and talk to him. Then I'd hear your truck and run out like I'd been caught doing something wrong. I stared at the hat. I thought not talking about him made it easier for you. We almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because we had spent 3 years carefully protecting each other from the only thing that might have saved us. I miss him, I said. It was the first time in a long time I had said it plainly. Natalie leaned into me, and I put my arm around her. We sat like that on the floor of the room we had avoided, surrounded by proof of a life that had mattered even if it never got to unfold. In the weeks after, things changed slowly. Natalie stopped going to Portland alone. Sometimes Meredith went. Sometimes a social worker did. Once, months later, I drove her, though I waited in the car because that was all I could do that day. Boundaries came late to us, but they came. We started seeing a grief counselor in Manchester on Wednesday evenings. The office had terrible coffee and a couch that sagged in the middle. The first session, I said almost nothing. The second, I got angry about the word closure. The third, I said Caleb's name without feeling like the room would collapse. Natalie told me more about Aaron, but not too much. I told her when I couldn't hear it. She respected that. I respected that whatever she had found in those visits had kept some part of her alive when I had been too locked inside myself to reach her. Our marriage did not become new overnight. It became honest first, which was harder. Some nights we still ate dinner quietly. Some mornings she still left mugs by the sink, and I still complained. But now when her phone buzzed, she didn't turn it over like a secret. And when I felt fear rise in me, I tried to speak before it grew teeth. In December, on the first real snow of the season, Natalie and I stood in Caleb's room and took apart the crib. Not because we were throwing him away. Because we were tired of keeping grief assembled like furniture. We kept the hat, the blanket, the wooden stars. We donated what we could. We cried over a box of diapers. Which sounds ridiculous until you've done it. Afterward, I made coffee. Natalie left hers beside the sink like always. I almost rinsed it without saying anything. Then I picked it up, carried it back to the table, and set it in front of her. You forgot this. She looked at the mug, then at me. I always do, I know. She wrapped both hands around it. Thank you for bringing it back. It was such a small sentence, it should not have mattered. But it did. That night I found the Portland key on the kitchen counter. Natalie had placed it there without ceremony. I don't need to keep it anymore, she said. I picked it up. It felt lighter than it had the first night, though of course it wasn't. What do you want to do with it? I asked. She thought for a moment. Give it back next time we're up there. Or mail it to Meredith. I don't know. I set it down between us. For a long time, that key had been proof of betrayal in my mind. Then it became proof of Natalie's secrecy. Later, proof of her pain. Now it was just a key. A piece of metal that opened one door and had nearly closed another. I reached for her hand. She let me take it. I wish I could say forgiveness arrived all at once, clean and bright. It didn't. It came like heat from that repaired space heater in Aaron's apartment. Weak at first, uneven, easy to doubt, but real enough to change the temperature of the room. Sometimes healing is not a grand speech. Sometimes it is a man fixing a heater for someone he still cannot forgive. Sometimes it is a woman admitting she lied because she was afraid grief had already taken too much. Sometimes it is two people sitting on the floor of a blue room, opening boxes they were sure would destroy them, and discovering that pain can be survived when it is finally shared. I used to think moving on meant leaving the past locked away. I know better now. Sometimes moving on means opening the room, touching what hurts, saying the name out loud, and realizing the house is still standing after all.